Hey everybody, this is Brandon Scott here with the next episode of the Fandom Pastor. So glad you could be here for this. Do me a favor and share this out. I'd really appreciate that to get the idea of the Fandom Pastor out there, that everything in the world, even those nerdy little parts of the world that we love, they can connect to God too. So this week we continue our Kaiju series. Now, you may not know what the word Kaiju means, but you know what it is. So Kaiju is the Japanese genre of giant monsters. So Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra, King Kong, these are all Kaiju. Now, for this particular series, what we're focusing on are the films produced by the company Toho. They were famously doing a lot of great giant monster movies. They are wonderful. I have a collection myself. I want to give a special shout out to Pastor Zachary over at Jasonville UMC for helping me write this series. Pastor Zachary is a expert, I would say, on these films. I enjoy them. I think they're great, but I don't have his knowledge and expertise in these. So it was a big help for him to help me write this. So I don't know if you picked up on the clue from last week or not, but what we are talking about today is Mecha-Godzilla. So last week or last time we had Godzilla, and this time we're talking about Mecha-Godzilla. So Mecha-Godzilla is a really neat one, and I always liked Mecha-Godzilla. He was a bad guy, but I love the idea of this giant robot, and so I always thought that was really neat. So in the original Godzilla, Mecha-Godzilla, and that's kind of the one we're looking at right now. Now understand that with Mecha-Godzilla, there was a lot of different interpretations or origin stories that came about. But we're looking at the original Godzilla versus Mecha-Godzilla. So, Mecha-Godzilla shows up, creating chaos and destruction and everything. And Aquarius, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is another kaiju who was friends with Godzilla at the time, and he notices right off, this ain't Godzilla. And so what he does is he's, kind of paying attention and stuff, ends up getting basically beat up by Mecha-Godzilla in the disguise of Godzilla. Now, this does not sit well with Godzilla himself, so he shows up to kind of protect his name, to kind of show everyone who's boss. He shows up, and through his atomic breath and his battle there, destroys this costume, this fake skin that was on Mecha-Godzilla, so that everyone can see, hey, this isn't a real Godzilla, this is this giant robot. So what's interesting is this is a great way to kind of see or reflect upon the fact that there are those out there that may have a costume, may have this other skin that they're putting on to try to fool people, to make people think that they are something that they're not. We recognize Christ. We recognize him, and as followers of Christ, we don't put on a costume. We are, or you should be, a follower of Christ, and that's it. There's no costume that you put on. It should be evident in who you are. But there are some people that look at Christianity as a blanket label, and so they see these groups, say for example, and they get a lot of heat, and it's a very common name, for a good reason, the Westboro Baptists. They profess to be Christian, and yet they definitely do not embody the Christian aspects. And yet, for people out there, they may say, well, you're no different than them, and they label us all under the title, the name of Christian, and don't give us the opportunity to prove them wrong, to correct this sad mistake that's been made. And I see that very much nowadays as well, when we're looking at our protests and things like that, because whether you necessarily agree with it or not, there is definitely, and we have evidence of that, that there are people who are joining these protests, peaceful protests, with the intent of causing destruction. Some are trying to instigate violence from the protesters. Now understand, the protesters and the looters and rioters, they're separate. Protesters are peaceful protesters. And they are the ones who are they're raising their voice and peacefully protesting. The ones who are rioting, the ones who are looting, the ones causing destruction are different. And again, there are some who are actively joining these groups simply to cause destruction. They're putting on the guise of protester without really wanting that. John 8:47 says, "Whoever belongs to God hears what God says. The reason you do not hear is that you do not belong to God." Because when we look at these people putting on these disguises, as Mecha-Godzilla did, they may say, "I'm this," but they're not following the true path. They're not following the actual way of God in their actions and their words. And so it's very important that we recognize the difference, especially nowadays. And so I think we need to be very careful how we talk and how we share information to make sure that we're being authentic to who they really, really are. There are some leaders throughout the world that are professing to be of a certain mindset, and by their actions you can see that they're not. I'm going to leave it at that, and I will ask you all to join me in a couple weeks as we continue this Kaiju series, which is a super fun one. I really have enjoyed it. And the clue for next time, in this character's first film, it was a turning point in Godzilla's transformation from villain to hero. Thanks, and God bless.